Hello and welcome to What a Ranker. Let's talk Oasis. We all know the story. The Gallagher brothers, Liam and Noel, Britpop, Oasis versus Blur, Sunshine, the biggest British band of the 90s, and their recent massive comeback just proves their music has stood the test of time. If you're not from the UK, it's hard to even explain how massive Oasis is over here. They're basically woven into the fabric of the country by now. I've always said that Oasis are both the most overrated and most underrated band. What do I mean by that? On the overrated side, you've got a certain type of fan here in Britain who doesn't just like them, they worship them. It's a proper religion. You can spot them a mile off. Bucket hats, Adidas, still saying mad for it, without a hint of irony. Their entire musical world begins and ends with Oasis, maybe with a bit of Stone Roses and football thrown in for good measure. They hated when Noel got a bit experimental in his solo career, and they loved Liam's solo stuff, precisely because it attempts to sound just like the old glory days of Oasis. In terms of being underrated, almost as a reaction to the religious Oasis Till I Die fans, amongst a lot of music fans, they are looked down on. The musos see them as basically a load of crap. Shit musicians, shit songs, shit fans. The truth is, Oasis were a decent band. They made some good stuff and they made some not so good stuff. In this video today, I'm going to be ranking their 7 studio albums and B-sides collection, the Masterplan. So let's get on with it. Ooh, this is a pretty rough start. When little me got into Oasis back in the day, this was their latest album. Released a year before I started listening to them, it was already an afterthought in the mind of the public. If Be Here Now was their big jump and slip as they aimed for the big time, and Standing on the Shoulder of Giants was the fall and death, surely Heathen Chemistry is the dead, bloated corpse just floating in the river. Oasis were out of fashion by 2002. Britpop had been replaced with, frankly, a much less fun and enjoyable music landscape. They reacted to this by releasing their worst album. This is the first album that doesn't really sound like an Oasis record. Standing on the Shoulders of Giants was an attempt to go a bit more experimental and mix things up a bit, but it still felt like Oasis. This attempt to strip it back just doesn't work. The first album with new bass player Andy Bell and new guitarist Gem Archer doesn't mesh particularly well for me, and sound-wise, it's all just so bland. The album starts pretty strong with the Hindu Times, also the first single from the album. It's a good rocker with its Beatles and Indian soundy lead guitar line, but after that the album just tanks. Gem and Andy both bring a song each and they are both terrible. Liam brings 3 songs which are still all a lot better than his Little James input on Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, but still aren't going to set the world alight. Songbird is fine, but I mean people big it up as if it's some amazing piece of songwriting from Liam. It's not. This is where Noel starts singing 3 songs per album. I hate Little by Little, so boring and bland. Stop Crying Your Heart Out is more Robbie Williams than rock and roll. The songs throughout are uninspired. The production is boring, and even their ace in the hole, Liam's incredible voice, is starting to wane here. It got a bit croakier on Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, but here it's getting weaker and more husky. Still a good voice, but missing the bite from the 90s. The band is more democratic from this point on. Liam, Andy and Gem write 5 songs of the album's 11 tracks, which would be fine if any of them were good songwriters. Noel is still the chief and main songwriter, but this is his weakest set of songs in his career, leading to a frankly pretty pants album. 3 out of 10 for Heathen Chemistry. In 2005, little teenage me's favourite band were Oasis, and my favourite film series was Star Wars. Yes, I was a super edgy teenager. And in May of that year, Star Wars Episode 3 was released, and so was Oasis's Don't Believe the Truth. I bought the Oasis album and then went straight to the cinema afterwards. I was genuinely depressed. I thought both the film and the album were shit. I genuinely thought, why is everything that was good now crap? Just as I'm old enough to be involved with it. People in the 70s and the 80s got the classic Star Wars trilogy, and people in the 90s got classic Oasis, and I'm stuck here with these bargain bin versions. I didn't have high hopes going into this album, as the first single, Lila, didn't exactly pump me full of anticipation. It has a nice verse, but the rest of it is throwaway. In classic Oasis style, well, there's a popular song called Lola already, there's a popular song called Layla already, so maybe we do a song called Lila? I have never met a Lila in real life. Drummer Andy White was fired before this album, and so they brought in Zach Starkey. In case they were too worried about the Beatles comparisons, they brought in Ringo's son. To be fair, he is a less showy off drummer, but he fits the vibe for this album. They didn't try and produce this album themselves, which was definitely a good idea, and sonically it's quite nice sounding. All the 90s bombastic, over-the-top layering is gone, and we have a more subtle and acoustic palette this time around. My problem with this is that Oasis are a big, bombastic and frankly silly band. That's part of what made them work. They were T-Rex, Status Quo and Slade all thrown in a blender. They tried to make serious pop music here. And when you remove all the big bloat and over-the-top guitar lines, they become very naked and the cracks show. I remember the reviews all saying this was a comeback album, and I played it to death and tried to convince myself it was good, but it's not. The songwriting is completely lacking, and although it's more coherent and together than Heathen Chemistry, it's so boring and average and basic. When the music is more stripped back, the lyrics become more important, and the lyrics here are just back-to-back shit. That being said, there is one exception, and that's the wonderful Importance of Being Idle. I was immediately drawn to this song on the album, and it is great. Decent lyric, great sound, and Noel sings it perfectly, but that can't save this plodder of a record, although it is a really good song. Noel did go on to make songs of this vein in his solo career. Anyways, another limp effort from the boys. 4 out of 10 for Don't Believe the Truth.
My family don't seem so familiar. Are my enemies all no?
1997's Be Here Now was a monster. An album now rather unfairly seen as one of the things that killed Britpop. 1994 to 1997, Oasis just kept getting bigger and bigger, and Be Here Now was meant to be the pinnacle of that climb. Unfortunately, it didn't quite stick the landing, and they were never as big again. So, after the relative disaster of Be Here Now, the band had to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and get back to work on a new album. A lot had changed in the years since Be Here Now. Bonehead and Giggsy, the rhythm guitarist and bassist from the very start, had decided to quit, leaving Noel to play most of the guitar and bass parts. Britpop had basically ended. As the new millennium began, music was becoming more electronic, and Oasis needed to try to stay relevant if they wanted to remain on top. Noel Gallagher had also quit drugs, so that was different too. Having used the same producer for their first 3 albums, they now tried someone new. They even had a new logo. This was essentially a complete band reset. This one has some good high points. Gas Panic has always been a banger for me. Lyrics about panic attacks, a great tune with some mad production. Fucking in the Bushes is a perfect opener full of great guitar riffs and cool production, and really tricks the listener into thinking this album is about to take off. Go Let It Out is a fine first single, but it's just Oasis by numbers at this point. I actually don't mind Who Feels Love with its Indian psychedelic style sound, and Roll It Over is a good final track. That said, this album also features some absolute stinkers. Liam Gallagher's first penned Oasis song, Little James, is an abomination. How this was allowed on the album is beyond me. It's truly awful. The lyrics are so cringy and border on embarrassing. I Can See a Liar is an awful rocker, as is Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is. The two songs Noel sings here have decent-ish melodies, but his voice isn't great on them. The album feels pretty uninspired, and Noel himself talks about this era being a creatively dry period for him. I have listened to this album so much over the years. It's annoying because it has some good points, but half of it is so bad and uninspired. 5 out of 10 for Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. The final album from Oasis was 2008's Dig Out Your Soul. By this point, I was listening to a wider variety of bands, so my anticipation for this one wasn't as strong, but I bought it anyway. And you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. While it's a long way from a great album, it's listenable, and there honestly aren't any truly bad songs on it. This one feels like Noel was finally more comfortable just writing the songs he wanted to write. It feels freer than his previous records, as if the pressure of trying to be the world's biggest band had finally lifted, allowing them to release a good, decent rock and roll album, which is exactly what this is. It's probably their least well-known album, partly because it's their only one that doesn't feature a truly well-known single. Smartly, they pack most of Noel's songs at the beginning, meaning the album starts really strong. Although Liam's voice wasn't great live by this point, it's produced well here on the record. This is also his strongest performance as a songwriter on any Oasis album. Bag It Up, The Turning, Waiting for the Rapture, Get Off Your High Horse are all songs I enjoy for this album, but unfortunately this album doesn't have any absolute bangers to write home about, which does give it a somewhat unimportant vibe. On their recent comeback tour, where they are barely touching anything post-90s, I don't think anyone is hoping they play something from this album. But standing on its own, it's a fine little rock and roll album, although also nothing to write home about overall. 6 out of 10 for Dig Out Your Soul. If their recent comeback setlists have proven anything, it's that Oasis did their best work in the 90s, which is probably the least controversial opinion ever. Unlike many of their contemporaries, they just weren't able to evolve in the new millennium. One of the things that marked Oasis at their creative peak was their incredible run of B-sides. Their singles often came with not just one, but multiple impressive B-sides. It was as if they thought they'd never run out of brilliant songs. How wrong they were about that. After Be Here Now, they released the Masterplan, a compilation of B-sides from the first few years of their career. Frankly, it's a cracking collection, and the quality of the songs here should probably place it higher on any list. However, I'm marking it down slightly because it doesn't flow like a cohesive studio album. The jumping between eras, drummers and production techniques is noticeable. But that's a minor quibble. The song quality is top-notch Oasis. Underneath the Sky, Listen Up, The World Away, It's Good to Be Free, Head Shrinker and the title track, The Masterplan are all top-tier songs in their catalogue. This is an absolute must-have for any fan. Oasis tended to throw their more acoustic songs on B-sides, such as Talk Tonight, so you get a good amount of soft and Noel sang numbers here. But you also get some of their heaviest stuff. I mean, Head Shrinker. I don't think Liam ever sounded so good. The middle of the album with the long drawn out swamp song and the live cover of I Am the Walrus don't really set the world alight, but as it's a compilation, there's nothing wrong with them being here. There isn't much more to say about this than it is a top-notch collection of songs from a band at its absolute peak. And it really highlights the dramatic drop-off in quality later on, as most of these songs are better than anything on the post-2000 albums. 7.5 out of 10 for the Masterplan. For 18 years, Be Here Now held the title of the fastest selling album in UK history. Their trajectory was meteoric. Their debut Definitely Maybe was the fastest selling debut album of all time. Its follow-up, What's the Story Morning Glory, was an absolute monster that spawned countless hit singles and sold what felt like 1 trillion copies. This was all capped off by their legendary 1996 Nebworth concerts, for which 2.5 million tried to buy tickets. Oasis were it. Third album was poised to launch them into the stratosphere, to make them the next U2, the next Beatles, the undisputed biggest band in the world. Selling 817,000 copies in the UK in its first week wasn't a bad start. But those massive numbers were based entirely on past glory, on the band they had been. Be Here Now is Oasis' fastest selling album, but it is not their biggest selling. Tellingly, after the tour, they virtually erased it from existence, rarely playing any of its songs live again. The album is generally considered a flop. The album that ended Oasis' dominance rather than took them to the next level. However, I quite like it. I've seen people call this their worst album, and I have no idea how anyone could rank Heathen Chemistry above it. This was actually the first Oasis album I ever heard. My dad was one of the millions who bought into the hype in the 90s. He listened to it once and never again, which is weird because he didn't even like the first 2 albums. I guess the hype just got to everyone. When I was about 13, I found it on the CD shelf, stuck it on and loved it. It was the only Oasis album I owned for a while. There was no streaming, so I had to download songs from the first 2 albums on LimeWire in bits and pieces. I like almost everything on this album, other than Don't Go Away. That song is trash. It's now infamous as the album where they were all completely off their nut and coke, stuffing every single channel with guitar tracks and stretching every song way too long. I don't disagree with that, but to me, Oasis are meant to be over the top. Their first 2 albums aren't exactly subtle. This one just turns it up to 11. It was never going to be bigger than What's the Story Morning Glory, because that album had pop songs. This one is heavier and rockier. Do you know what I mean is a great opener? My Big Mouth has about 100 million guitars in it. Magic Pie would be a good 3-minute song, but they stretched it to over 7 minutes somehow. Stand By Me is a decent single. I Hope I Think I Know is a great album track. The Girl in the Dirty Shirt is a cracker. Now is so underrated, I really like it. Don't Go Away is crap. The title track Be Here Now is great, and All Around the World at 9 minutes is good. It's Getting Better Man is a decent ending track. Also, I think this is peak Liam Gallagher singing in their catalogue. The energy and punkiness is still there, but there is a little bit of growl coming through, which gives it more character. Watch any videos of them live during the Be Here Now tour and Liam sounds fucking amazing. This is the last album they made that truly sounds like Oasis. I see this and the first 2 as a complete trilogy, and it often gets overlooked, though I've noticed it's finally getting a bit of a revival lately. The fact that they're now playing Stand By Me and Do You Know What I Mean in their comeback gigs means Noel has probably gotten over the trauma of its initial reception. But to me, this is the essence of a fun Oasis album. Yes, it's bloated, over the top, and borderline ridiculous in places, but that's what Oasis are. I will always stand up for this album. 7.5 out of 10 for Be Here Now. I really wanted to put Be Here Now above What's the Story Morning Glory, but if I'm being genuine, I have to place What's the Story in second place. It has Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger, which I personally never want to hear again due to being overplayed to death. But that's not the song's fault for being so popular, they're good songs. Champagne Supernova is a great finisher, even with the lyric, slowly walking down the hall, faster than a cannonball. She's Electric is a really catchy Beatles-esque number, despite the line, she's got a sister and on the palm of her hand is a blister. The thing about Oasis is that at his best, Noel writes incredible melodies, both verse and chorus. But his lyrics just suck so badly so often. I don't think a band's lyrics have to be amazing, but when they stand out for being bad, that's when I have a problem. On many occasions, clumsy lines stick out and slightly ruin songs that could otherwise be almost perfect. That being said, this album has that greatest hits feeling. Every track could have been a hit. Some might say Roll With It, Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger and Champagne Supernova were all massive hits, whilst Hey Now, Cast No Shadow, She's Electric and Hello all could have been hits and are super famous in their own right. It's just one of those albums where everyone knows every single track, and that is super impressive considering it came out just a year after their debut. However, for all its song quality, the album does lack cohesion. I personally don't think it flows as well as some of their others. I remember as a little kid seeing the album cover to this everywhere, even before I knew what it was. It was so huge. It's actually the third biggest selling studio album of all time in the UK. But yeah, there's no denying this is a good album, even if it's not as good as some die-hard Oasis fans claim. 8 out of 10 for What's the Story? Morning Glory. So for number 1, it's obviously definitely Maybe. No surprise to anyone. It's their most cohesive listening experience as well as their strongest set of songs. As with many bands' debuts, this is essentially their live set of the time, recorded live in the studio. They actually had to re-record it a couple of times to get it right, but that was only because it originally didn't sound enough like their live shows. And this album feels live. It's all distorted, and unlike any of their others, it's a proper rock and roll album. There are no acoustic songs until Married with Children at the end, and no song sung by Noel. Liam sings it all. They sacked Tony McCarroll from the drums after this album, which I think was probably necessary going forward, as he's not a great drummer, but his playing works perfectly here because it adds to the rough and ready working class lads feel of the whole thing. It all feels authentic, like they don't really know what they're doing, but they have these great songs and are just having a go. That attitude adds to the punky aesthetic. It combines punk energy with great songwriting. Even the lyrics aren't bad on a lot of this. Tracks like Cigarettes and Alcohol actually seem to have meaning, and the more nonsensical songs work better here. Noel's guitar playing is the best it ever was. For my money, Rock and Roll Star is the most overrated Oasis song. I've never liked it. I can see why they opened the album with it, but it's actually my least favourite here. Shaker Maker is great, a good psychedelic song. Live Forever is Live Forever. Like Wonderwall, I don't need to hear it again, but it's a good song, and Noel's solo in it is fantastic. He didn't really bother with guitar solos after the 90s. Up in the Sky is a great meeting of psychedelic and punk, and Columbia is perfection. Hypnotic and catchy. Supersonic is an Oasis classic, a song I never get bored of. Bring It On Down, Cigarettes and Alcohol and Digsy's Dinner are all cracking tunes. Slide Away is a song I loved when I was younger, then went off, and now when I listen to it again, it's pure class. Liam's voice on this thing is insane. Yes, Oasis never beat their debut release, and whether you think Oasis are overrated or underrated, I think we can all agree that Definitely Maybe was a cracking debut for them. 9 out of 10 for Definitely Maybe. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below, letting me know your list. I'll see you next time on What a Ranker. Now, go listen to some Oasis.